Yesterday, I caught up with their CEO, Dean McKenzie, some rather large news coming out of there. So let's go and hear what he had to say about this. Well, Dean, you've had the feet under the desk, I suppose, 6 or 7 months now, so it was inevitable there were going to be some changes, and the most significant, of course, is the Woodlands New Zealand free-for-all.
Yeah, there is that process that we've gone through, and I mean that process started, I think, in January, where we first started sitting down talking about the business plan for next year and what we were going to do and some of the changes that we were going to make and as a team. And I think the club were particularly focused on making show day a target of some of that change and trying to obviously improve that and make it a better experience for wagers and customers. And part of that process, out of that process, came the changes to the free-for-all, yeah.
Let's talk about the most significant, the distance. We're going back to a mile, and gee, we haven't raced over a mile at Addington for the best part of 20 years.
No, and I think it's 67 years or something, Dave McCarthy tells me, since the free-for-all was last run at a mile. So, no, you're right. So I think it was 91 was the last time a true mile was run here under normal conditions. So it is a bit of a back to the future type thing. But I think a lot of the thinking behind it's very sound, that the team have come and have been discussing for a long period of time. I think the track being, the grading of the track being significantly altered at around 2000, the passing lane, the pylons coming in at 95 all make it the mile start here completely different to the mile start that was you'd be best described as debated heatly back in those days. So we think it's worth a try, and I think some of the feedback we've had, or most of the feedback we've had over the last few days and last week when we did the tour of the Canterbury stables was very positive, and willing to give it a go and seeing what happens.
10 runners, first 6 home in the Cup, they'll automatically get in, then there's a bit of discretion.
Yeah, that's what we're planning to do. I think we want the best 10 to go round. So you've always got to allow for the good horse maybe missing away in the Cup or something of that nature. So I think there needs to be a discretionary factor put into it, but we think we've got the balance right. It wasn't, I think, initially what we had put together, but I think after we're going out and talking to the troops around the place, we've incorporated a lot of that feedback into our thinking, and I think we've ended up with a pretty good result.
You've come up with a couple of other significant changes, a futurity, which I think is quite exciting, and details will come out in the weekly, etc. about that, and also some incentives around starters at Addington Raceway, most significantly the Met multiplier.
Yeah, I think these incentives that we've come up with and will be announced over the next few days and weeks as we roll into the new season are all designed at getting hoof traffic up here at the raceway, and as we all know, it's not rocket science that good numbers drive turnover, and with all the events that have been around the place in the last 18 months or so, our numbers aren't what they were, and we've got to work hard to improve on that. So these incentives all have one thing in common, and that's the ability or the desire to try and get more hoof traffic back to the raceway. And the Met multiplier, we like to think is a good incentive. It's nice and simple. You just have to start 15 times over a 12-month rolling period at the raceway at a Met meeting and win one of those 15 starts. It's not an onerous challenge. I think it's a challenge enough for someone to take on. I think most of the feedback we've had, they keep looking for a catch. So it's a good sign when they actually can see you can see the horsemen thinking of the horses in their stable that that they can actually send round and win that $7,500 bonus. So no, we're really excited about that.
So some good news coming out of Addington Raceway there. Most significantly, Craig, from a racing point of view, going back to a mile for the free-for-all. Also being mooted, the Sires Stakes winner from the Tuesday at Addington may well be invited to partake in that race, and potentially could be handed Barrier 1, which would certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons. That has only been mooted, it hasn't been confirmed, but it is part of the process. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it staggers me a little bit, Greg. I think the Addington club have to be congratulated on their initiatives. I think 3 or 4 of them very, very smart, but this mile start at Addington, the question mark for me is where it's starting from, and it's at the 400 metre marker, Greg. It's right on a bend. I know we've got a front line of 6 and a second row of 4, but gee, it must disadvantage horses drawn outside Barrier 3. I mean, we've got controversy about the Jewels at the moment, where at Cambridge we've got such a short run to the first bend. Well, they've got no run to this bend, Greg. They're starting right on a corner here, so hasn't been run for 21 years. It's certainly very innovative, and I'm sure we'll find out a lot more after show day whether it's been taken on board. My personal view is if it's not broke, don't change it. But hey, I mean, they're trying something new and good on them. But Greg, as far as the size stakes winner starting from barrier 1, I mean, if they give him that incentive to start there, personally, I don't know if the 3-year-old would even back up 3 days later. It's hard enough for the Cup horses to back up, and they're tough horses that race week in, week out. I mean, we're talking the early part of the season, November, for 3-year-olds. Some of them aren't even 3 yet, so they've got bigger fish to fry later in the season. They've got the derbies, they've got the harness jewels, trips to Australia. Would you want to have a hard run 3 days later against the open class horses on the back of a hard run in the Sire Stakes heat? I don't know whether horses would like to back up with such a long season ahead. What's your point of view on that?
Well, there is an opportunity for them to start. Barrier 1 would certainly be an encouragement when you consider the likes of Stunning Cullen, Auckland Reactor, amongst others, Stallion Potential to beat the free-for-allers. Yeah, it's certainly going to open up some discussion, which I think is a very, very good thing.